Hey everyone, Tiz here. So in this video I'm going to break down how going for your private pilot's license is going to be broken down in terms of training and what you can expect. So stay tuned and I will lay out the private pilot license training for you. Cool, so let's say you don't have any hours and you're just getting into the aviation scene and you want to go for your private pilot's license. I've done a previous video, if you look back on my channel, on how to get your commercial pilot's license, and that's kind of just the overarching steps in order broken down to get that license. However, I'm now going to further break down the private pilot's license and how you're going to expect to see your training pan out. So essentially, first of all, you want to have your flight school, or you're going to go to your flight school or your aero club, or potentially a private provider that will allow you to train for your private pilot's license, your PPL. And from there on out, you're going to start initially with your ab initio lessons. So what are ab initio lessons? Ab initio lessons are the fundamentals of flying. For example, you've got effects of controls, then you've got straight and level, climbing and descending, and so on, medium turns, and it just builds up so you can build the fundamentals of actually flying. And you've also got stalls involved as well, so you can build those key skills before you actually reach the next step of your training or the next phase within your PPL, and that's going to be circuit training. Alright, so what is circuit training? Well, you ever see those aircraft and they do takeoffs and landings and they tend to go in a rectangular pattern around an airport or an aerodrome? That is your circuit, and that's what you're going to learn in this phase. You're going to learn how to safely take off effectively, even though you probably at this stage have already had a good few tries at actually taking off the aircraft from the ground. However, this is where we also really focus on your landings and trying to get those safe and how to perform them correctly. Not only just with takeoffs and landings, you learn how to do an effective pattern, how to do all your radio calls, how to do your downwind checks, so your pre-landing checks, and how you're going to set up the aircraft in terms of actually landing it, how to do this all effectively and safely, and managing other traffic in the circuit. In this phase, you'll also learn a few techniques such as glide approaches and also flapless landings, and also engine failures after takeoff. So all those kind of critical items, if you were to have an engine failure or something abnormal happen, you can get down safely and you've been trained for it. Once you've done all that and you can demonstrate to an instructor now that you are competent, they will likely send you solo. There on out, you get some solo consolidation, so you have to build up a few hours by yourself in the circuit pattern where your instructor will be supervising you from the ground. Cool, now that you're confident, you've done your solo consolidation in the circuit, you can expect to go into your advanced dual training. Now, advanced dual training occurs outside of the circuit now, and generally your first one that you'll tackle will be forced landings without power. So this is simulating that you've got an engine failure now, and you need to safely land it in a location, generally a paddock, and perform all the required procedures, and most importantly, landing it in the paddock, being safe, all in one piece. Now, this forced landing lessons, or these, if there's more than one, will have to be completed before you do your first local solo, and that is your first solo now out of the circuit and in the training area that you generally train in. From here on out, you've also got extra lessons such as steep turns that you also learn, so turning the aircraft or rolling into an angle back of 45 degrees. In ab initio, you learn medium turns, which is 30 degrees. You also learn wing drop stalling. So on a whole, you can typically expect one dual, one solo, one dual, one solo in this phase, or potentially, depending on how the weather is as well, or your training provider, it can be two dual, one solo. So it does change per the provider. However, there are certain lessons that need to be met and required in order to provide you getting to that next step. Cool, what is that next step now? Well, after you've done that, you can then look on to getting to IF, which is instrument flying. So typically you're going to have some foggles on, which is kind of the half of the like wee little goggles or glasses that can be half covered from the top onwards, so you can only see the bottom half, and that will be so you can see your instruments but you can't see outside. You can also have a big hood over you which covers the outside view, and you just got view on the instruments. Now this is simulating instrument flying, where you're going to be told to track a direction, keep a certain height, and practice some turns, all just using the instruments themselves. Once you've done your instrument flying, you are then going to move on into terrain and weather awareness. For terrain and weather awareness, you need 2 hours minimum of low flying and 2 hours minimum of basic mountain flying as well. That extra hour can be, which you need 5 in total for your tower, can be made up of either low flying or basic mountain flying as well. So that is your next phase, and then comes the exciting phase after that. Now the most exciting phase or super cool phase of your PPL is your cross countries. So this is where you're actually going to track from your home aerodrome to somewhere else, and generally another location as well. So 2 to 3 aerodromes in total. And with these ones, you have to be traveling further than 25 nautical miles in order for it to be counted as a cross-country flight. Now there's certain requirements that you have to meet for the syllabus in this cross-country phase. I won't dive into that here, however you can expect your cross-country phase, you'll need to have 10 hours completed of that. Now you've done your cross-country phase, you then move on into the PPL revision phase, so all the revision just prior to your actual flight test. Now this can include everything that you've done in your early lessons, such as your ab initio stuff, and you're touching on your turns, your stalls, forced landings, general handling of the aircraft, also your circuits. So everything you've covered, you're now going to refine and polish it, ready to go for that private pilot's license test. Okay, so now you've completed your revision, you're now up for your test. Generally how it works is your school, your provider, your instructor will book a flight examiner for you, and on the day of your test you're going to be using the aircraft of your choice, which is generally how it goes, because you want to use the one that you're most comfortable and familiar with. The flight examiner then is going to test you on some groundwork, and that will be inclusive of anything in the law that you will need to know, your PPL law, and then also anything that you touch on regarding your aircraft itself, through its operating manual, also the AIP, which is this little black binder that you can get that also has everything relating to VFR flying, that's specifically volume 4. So there's a lot of theory that they can test you on. They'll also give you a little bit of a scenario. They will also want to know, okay, how can you work out a performance, and then, so I should say a P chart. That's your performance chart. Also inclusive of that is your landing chart, and also weight and balance, how you're going to work out that manually for your aircraft too. Provided you get through all the groundwork fine, you'll then go for your actual flight itself. Now your flight test, once again, at the examiner's discretion, can test you on pretty much a multitude of things from that flight test. They will have certain requirements that will need to be met and critical items. So if you want to know more about that, you can visit the flight test standard guide. So just pop that in on Google and look at the one for your PPL, your private pilot's license. Okay, cool. That's all done now, and you have come back inside and you have found out that you've passed your private pilot's license flight test. So from here, you now have a bit of paperwork to fill out, and then you send it off to the CAA, and then CAA comes back to you, provided everything was correct in that paperwork and everything was provided that they needed. You'll get your little card, plastic card, which is your PPL license. So congratulations if you reach that far, and from here on out you can continue to fly. Now with passengers, you must know, once again, this is prior to your actual flight test, your PPL privileges and limitations, so what you can and what you can't do with your license. Now one thing I didn't touch on earlier, because I was talking about all the flying portion of things, is your theory exams. So for your PPL, you need to complete 6 theory exams, and that needs to be done before your cross-country phase as well. Now for your PPL license, you need to have a minimum of 50 hours to actually test. Generally you'll find it between 60 and 65. Most people will actually test that. If you're not doing your cross-country, because you don't actually have to do cross-country if you want your PPL, you can have a restricted PPL, you will need to have a minimum of 40 hours. Now that you've got your private pilot's license, you can't automatically do night flying either. You also need to be signed off for night flying and have night hours. So you will be on a restricted PPL until those are completed. However, if you don't intend to fly at night, then there's no issue at all. You can just carry on and use your license within your privileges and your limitations. So hopefully this video helped. If you've got any questions, chuck it in the comments below, and also subscribe to the channel if you want to know for any further advice and tips or anything aviation related as well that'll pop up. And we'll see you guys on the next one.